a few years ago I decided to give up work, sell everything, and take the plunge into the world of narrowboating and canals and life on the English canals. Totally unknown to me, this kind of lifestyle, and I took the plunge. So why don't you join me in my adventures around the country? Just walking down to the town centre from the moorings.
This is an infirmary school.
So I'm very impressed with Lancaster. Very impressed. Do you want to go on that side?
What is it, come along?
What?
What is it, come along?
I'm going to go on that side, dear. Looks like it's the side, doesn't it?
Is it split?
No, not yet. I mean, it's quite Pendle Witch, quite nice. Unusual yellow doors, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yellow door.
Just seen a Chinese shop, Oriental. Oh, it smells like Taiwan. Isn't it? It smells like Taiwan.
Yeah. Oh, you can get walk, yes.
Get what? Yes, exactly.
I found one of the jeans.
Very interesting things going on. Very unusual type of strange, unusual stuff. This is the end of the precinct. Cracking place, this is. It really is. Pretty streets. Students, look, £3 single, lunchtime special. Any sandwiches wrapped, £10. Oh, I like it here though. Stay here for a few days, I think. Got a view cinema.
What?
Got a view.
Oh my word.
Shui, see what films are on.
Yeah, the new one that Mad Max.
Mad Max.
Yeah.
What
the new one.
Have a look, shall we? So what's
New one's already come out.
really?
What is elevating? Over there. Such a bargain. Isn't it?
What?
$4.99 every day.
Bargain. What's this? Kingdom Planet of the Apes. Oh, Sui, when's that coming out? That's out now. Sui. Leela.
I don't think they have a name.
What?
I don't think they have a name.
No?
Alright. Okay. Can I have one of that, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 8 of it. Wow.
The Sui. She's got her fill. She's got a fill. She's got a dinner. Now the Sui's returning to her nest to feed. What a lovely shot, isn't it? Through that archway. Lovely quiet spot, I thought. lovely quiet spot, didn't we? But it's turned into an absolute bloody so loud, isn't it? Just here. We thought, oh, it's a lovely quiet spot here until these tractors start going up and down. I think they're cutting the grass in the fields and they're filling these tractors up. Oh my God, they're so loud. Bang, outside of the thundering past. Up and down, up and down, up and down, aren't they? God, they're farmers, I can't blame them. We thought, oh, this is lovely and peaceful, this spot here. Yeah, that very next day. Here we are at the castle. Fabulous place. They do tours 12 o'clock.
Come on then.
So I'm hoping they do a tour at 12.
Shall we get in first?
We've got to go around the front.
Yeah.
Wow, there's a lot going on here. Beautiful views. Old world type buildings. Heavily renovated. The views from up here are absolutely gorgeous. Hills in the background, can you see them? Can I go any closer? Wow. And over there, you got that stunning building up there. I don't know what it is, but we'll find out.
Sure.
Do you want to wait here while I run down and have a look?
Yeah, please.
Wait here, love. Reminds me of France, Sui. Reminds me of France. This reminds me of France, to be honest, this area. I think the entrance is up here somewhere. It's got to be. This is such a gorgeous city. I keep saying that, I know what I was going to say. It's historical, stony. Just the quality of the buildings looks fantastic to me. Got a coffee shop, toilets, churches.
Nice living in here.
We're just waiting here to go into the castle for a little tour, isn't it, Sui?
Yeah.
£8 each.
Yeah.
£8 each to go in
Oh,
to the castle. Beautiful day. I've got my charity shop shirt on, charity shop jeans, but not a charity shop hat or shoes.
You know,
What have you got from the charity shop, Sui?
nothing.
Is that top
No.
from
the top-
Taiwan?
No, the top is from Next.
Oh, from Next.
Yeah.
You're not a charity shop person like me, are you?
Top from Next.
She's ready to go in. And about this place is basically a prison. It was a prison, a place of punishment, and there's a police station, the police museum there. It's basically a place of punishment, and most punishment back in the day was for refusing to pay your taxes, because again they were completely corrupt. The king was spending it on whatever he wanted to spend it on, and the people didn't like it, and they tried to tax them and tax them and tax them. I think it was 4 pence, gone from 1 pence to 4 pence it went to, yeah, per year I think, or something like that, or per week. Didn't like it, so he sent all the thugs out to get his money back. and that's what they didn't like. So they went to London and they ransacked it. Back in the history.
Yeah.
The bells, they do toll. 12 o'clock, nearly. Is that nice? Oh, that's soft.
Yeah.
What's that about? It's very spongy.
If I have a floor, I will go for this.
Yeah, would you?
Yeah.
What, outside?
Soft. Inside.
Inside?
Yeah, inside. Or
Inside? Tarmac floor inside?
It's not. No, this is not tarmac.
What is it then?
Special flooring.
It's hard to. It's like sand, but
Yeah,
it's
but when you stand on it, it's soft,
spongy. Yeah, spongy underneath.
isn't it?
Bang on time. 12 o'clock. The guide's supposed to be here at 12.
I'm Christopher. There's a couple of things I need to go over with just before we begin, so I'll get them out of the way before I forget. Firstly is if there's a fire alarm at any point, come with me, I know the way out. So for the second half of the tour, once we get into those court buildings over there, they are still legally courts. That means firstly no photography or any recording of any kind, 2 years in prison or £5,000 fine if you do. Also, once we're in there, if you want to leave the tour, that's fine, just tell me, I'll show you a doorway out, but we can't have you wandering off. It is a secure building, we do have to come looking for you, which isn't fun for anyone. And because it has been a court, a prison for much of its history, I will be talking about capital punishment, the death penalty, hangings, things like that. If that doesn't sound like fun, that's entirely fine, but just make sure you get a refund before we begin. So you're okay with learning a bit about hangings, things like that as we go?
Yeah.
Right, so since you're a fairly small group, are any of you quite local to the area, or you're just visiting? Or
Visiting.
visiting?
Visiting.
Preston.
Preston?
Manchester.
Argentina.
Okay.
By the way, it's obvious. You win. I win.
So if you've got any questions as we go, feel free to ask, although my answer might be that I don't know, or that's a better place to talk about it a bit later on, but just feel free to ask. And if I didn't say just then, once we get into there might be some uneven floors, low doorways, things like that. I'll try and point them out to you before we get to them. Mind your head, mind your feet, that sort of thing. So, there's been a fortress here for about 2,000 years. In roughly AD 70, the Romans built a fort here, much larger than the present castle that covered the entire of the hill. So the reasoning for building a fort here is to control the passageways north and south. If you're moving up and down the west coast of England, between the Pennine Mountains and the sea, you're going to cross the River Lune. There's a ford beneath where Skirton Bridge is today. Ships could also come up the river, so it could be the raiders, also merchants, and supply the fort as well. Here on the hill, it's much harder to attack. You can also see all the way over Morecambe Bay to the Lake District. The old roads came down via the coast, so we'd see anyone coming long before they arrived. The Roman forts, so it's a fort, a castrum on the River Lune. It is the Lune castrum, it is Lancaster. The Roman fort is eventually abandoned by the Romans. There was probably a British Anglo-Saxon settlement within it. Various British kings fight over the area, it's a bit of a no man's land, until in 1092 a Norman nobleman named Roger de Poitou, whose father fought at the Battle of Hastings, invades Cumbria. He moves the English border from the River Ribble to north of Carlisle, roughly where it is today. He's rewarded with lands that roughly correspond to modern Lancashire, and he builds a little wooden castle here within the ruins of the Roman fort. There's nothing now remains of his wooden castle, as Roger ends up joining a failed rebellion against the king. He's punished, his lands and his castle are stripped from him, and Lancaster Castle comes into royal ownership for the first time. And that's been the case mostly ever since. Lancaster Castle for much of the past 900 years has been owned by a member of the royal family, usually the monarch, but not always. That is still the case today. King Charles owns the castle, he gets some of your ticket money. The first king to own it is Henry I, the younger son of William the Conqueror, and he gave it to his nephew Stephen. Henry had no sons. He says, when I die, the throne will go to my daughter Matilda. The barons don't agree with this, and they elect Stephen to be king primarily because he's a man. Matilda's not best pleased. She's been living in France, so she invades England from the south, whilst her cousin, King David of Scotland, invades England from the north. Stephen cuts a deal with David. You can keep the north if I can keep the south. So Lancaster becomes the most southern part of the Kingdom of Scotland for 16 years. And to protect his new conquests, David builds the keep. So that's the big building covered in all the green scaffolding at the moment. So it's a big square brick of a building, it's probably where all the Roman ruins went, recycled to build that. So it's the inner keep, the bit that will keep you safe, the last part to fall into several attacks, in theory. and that's built around about 1130. When the civil wars end, David returns Lancaster to Matilda's son, Henry II. Henry then gives Lancaster to his youngest son, Prince John. Probably familiar with Prince John from Robin Hood, the evil prince collecting all the taxes. For a time, he lived here at Lancaster. So he built the original royal apartments, which no longer exist, and he also built the original stone walls. So that kind of mottled bit there, that's a bit pink and white, that's the remain of King John's original medieval walls. There's very little still left. Then about 100 years later, in the early 1300s, Robert the Bruce, King of Scots, comes down to Lancashire in the Great Raid, steals everything he can, burns everything he can't, attempts to break into the castle through the walls here, but fails to get in. After the Scots go back to Scotland, we build this tower to both repair the damage and to fortify it against any further attacks. So that's called the Well Tower. There's wells down there. It's sometimes referred to as the Witches' Tower, as there's dungeons down there where the Pendle Witches were held during the Pendle Witch trials. I'll talk a bit more about them later on. The castle carries on being passed down by the younger sons of the monarch until we get to John of Gaunt. He's the most famous in the wars of Lancaster. He appears in Shakespeare, he's got pubs named after him, that sort of thing. He's the richest man in the country, and his nephew Richard II is quite jealous of him. So when he dies in 1399, Richard seizes Lancaster and all of its lands. John's son Henry Bolingbroke then leads a rebellion, overthrows Richard, and proclaims himself King Henry IV, the first king of the House of Lancaster. He builds the big gatehouse you entered through, called the John of Gaunt gatehouse in the mistaken belief it's his father who built it. And Henry then decrees that every monarch from then on, every king or queen of England since, shall also be the Duke of Lancaster. That has been the case. King Charles is Duke of Lancaster, his mother was Duke before him. But while we have this kind of special connection with the monarchy, very few dukes or kings actually visit the castle. And if they do visit, they tend to stay for the afternoon, they don't really stay overnight. And from then on, its main purpose is as courts and as a prison. The royal apartments become the courts, and the medieval towers become the prison blocks. And nothing really changes for about 300-400 years, so we'll get into the late 1700s. By this point, the castle's very old, population has grown a great deal, which includes the prison population. It's very overcrowded. There's a lot of disease, a lot of dirt amongst the prison population, which no one really cares about until a bout of jail fever or typhus kills the prison governor. Now it's suddenly seen as a problem, and they embark on this big program of rebuilding. So most of the medieval towers and walls are pulled down. The new walls are built much further out, and new castle buildings are built as the new prison blocks. But because the people of Lancaster want their castle to still look like a castle, they put these battlements around the top so it looks nice and castle-y. So these were actually built sort of 1790, 1800. They want you to think that it's part of an old medieval castle. The first thing they built was the prison governor's house behind me. He's the most important man. And then the later prison blocks as well. This one here is called the King's Evidence Tower. So giving King's Evidence is essentially the formal name for snitching. If you want to give evidence against your fellow criminals, you're separated out from the general population so they don't murder you essentially. You've got a nice bed, you've got better food. After you've given evidence in their trial, they're probably all getting hanged, and you are then free to go with a full pardon and released. The prison ran initially until 1916, when most of the men were sent off to the trenches. It was then used as a police training academy in the 1920s and 30s, which is why we have the police museum over there in cell block A. So that is free to enter today. It will be closing for lunch during the tour, but at 11:30 or 1:30 it will reopen. It's free to visit, so go have a wander around there after the tour. And then in the 1960s it reopened as a category C male-only prison. That's kind of the lowest grade of harshness and severity. These internal courtyards were filled with more and more buildings. There was all sorts of prefabricated buildings. This was roughly where the visitor centre was, where people would come and visit their imprisoned relatives. It was pulled down after the prison closed in 2011. So the 31st of March is 2011 when the prison closed. So only 14, 15 years ago there were still people being imprisoned here. And this sort of pale stone is the bit that was covered by the visitor centre. So these was kind of pulled down in the last sort of 10, 15 years, and it's been renovated into this nice piazza. It wasn't quite like this when the prison was still here. We're going to start moving now into one of the prison buildings, into cell block C, which is through this doorway here. Just to forewarn you, it gets colder inside than it is outside. and this part was built in around about 1820. I think the original Roman name was like Calunium.
Can I film in here?
Yes, yeah, you can take pictures of things like that in here.
Oh yeah.
It's
colder, isn't it? It's much colder.
So this is cell box C.
Bingo.
This was built in 1821. This was the first woman's penitentiary. So before this was built, the men and women were just kept together in the same cells until this was built. And it's something called a panopticon. So pan, all, opt is seeing. It's an all-seeing prison. The central tower where I am is where the guards would be, and then the cells radiate off like the spokes of a wheel. The wood was added on later, so originally it was just the bars. So the prison guards can look into every cell with just a turn of their heads. So the idea is firstly it's a lot cheaper to run, you need far fewer guards. But also because there'd be shutters here, the prisoners wouldn't actually know if anyone was watching them. So they would have to act at all times as if someone was. The idea is then that this idea will stay with them, and once you've released them, they'll go out into the world and be much better people because they'll imagine there's a guard over their shoulder. Is the idea, as you can probably imagine, it doesn't quite work like that. When you're trapped in a cell, you've got no idea if anyone's watching you or not. It caused a lot of paranoia, a lot of mental health problems, to the point even the Georgians and Victorians realised these weren't a very good idea. Most panopticons were knocked down. They didn't have the time or the money to do that here at Lancaster, so they just put the wood on and carried on using them as cells. So it was used until 1916, and then from the 1960s onwards, it would have been 2 men to a cell. So if you have a look in that cell there, the bunk bed is gone, but the loo and the sink is still there. They were added in the 1990s. Before then, it was just buckets. You'll also see that there's a pair of safes. Might be surprised that there's a lot of thieves in prison. If you've got something valuable you don't want your cellmate to see, you've got tobacco, a letter of your address on, family photos, that kind of thing. You can put it in there to keep it safe from your cellmates. The black pipe that you'll see in there, and also with your heads, that's the central heating system. So it's been sort of retrofitted in sort of later years. Part of the reason the prison closed in 2011 was because of the expense. It was one of the smallest in the country, but also one of the most expensive per prisoner, due to the size and the age of the buildings, and bits kept falling off. So listed buildings, they couldn't make as many changes as they wanted to, that sort of thing. This metal counter is essentially a canteen.
When did it stop?
The 31st of March 2011 was when it closed. So, yeah, about 30, 40 years ago, there was still people being imprisoned in here. Which, as you can see, its age is partly why it was closed.
Yeah.
So I think it had quite a bad infestation of black mould that had to be dealt with before we could start bringing people back in. Probably because it hadn't been heated for a few years. So this counter was like a canteen. The prisoners would be called out from their cells, they'd get the food, and then they'd head back into the cells to eat. Which is probably fine on this level, but if you stand in the tower and look up, you'll see there's another 4 floors above us. And if you're on the top floor, you're probably not getting hot food. But they were apparently the most popular cells because they actually have a view. They're tall enough to see over the walls, so they can see the town and the cells as well.
Okay.
And these cells are also known as the coffins because they're thinner at one end, wider at the other. Give you a moment to have a little look in the cells. Do take a peek. And we managed to get it all the way up to the top of the tower, over the wall to a tree on the outside. 2 men made the attempt. One fell.
All the prisoners go up there. Balance of scales. It's not balanced, is it?
I think it had already been opened by that point. Most of the prisoners here were sent down to Preston initially. This was the largest debtors' prison outside of London. There were at times more debtors than there were convicts. So if you were a tradesman of some sort, you could carry on practicing that trade, sell your things, pay off your debts that way. But if you were a labourer or a sailor or that sort of thing, you could just be trapped in here. You'd have to pay legal fees, buy your own food, so your debts were just going to get bigger. The idea was that maybe friends, family, some good Samaritan would give you the money to pay off your debts, but people could be imprisoned for as little as a penny and end up being trapped in here for life.
Wow.
Those were the poor debtors, but then there were also the rich debtors. If you were in debt, you could just turn up at the front gate, say, "I've got debts, let me in." They could not legally refuse you, and as long as you remain within the castle, your creditors cannot touch your money, they cannot charge you any further interest.
Wow, that's
and if you've got the money, you can buy a nice room, you can get nice food, you can pay the poor debtors to be your servants, and live quite a nice life here in the castle. One of the prison governors was George Hansborough, and this was called the Hansborough Hotel for people in Lancaster. Letters were addressed as such, and they did get delivered. There's paintings and sketches done by the wealthy debtors. One of the prison inspectors says it has the feel of a slightly rowdy tea garden. They do seem to be having a nice time, playing bowls and that sort of thing. There were people who would intentionally abuse the system though, take out loans, no intention of repaying them, turn up at the castle, and if their creditors ever came to them, they might sort of offer to pay half of it in exchange for having it written off, or I say, no, don't mind living in the castle, thank you very much. So while that, you do have these two very different groups of people. You've got these really poor people living in really wretched circumstances, and then these quite wealthy people who seem to be having a non-stop party. 1869, the Bankruptcy Act is passed, all the debtors are rounded up, thrown out the front gates, and essentially told, pay your debts off or declare bankruptcy, those are your options. So for the poor people, it was, they were suddenly free, but then for these quite wealthy people, they suddenly had to go live in the real world, essentially. We're heading to the door in a moment, so that's where we're going to head towards. That field there is through this next doorway, we will be legally within the courts. So whilst initially it's not going to be courtrooms that we're in, it is all legally a court. So that means no photography, no recording of any kind, 2 years in prison, £5,000 fine.
So this gentleman here was George Fox, and he believed that everyone was equal in the eyes of God. They accused him of blasphemy and they imprisoned him here. He was imprisoned a few times, 1660 to 1664. And here's the imprisoner that did it. So we're now going to see the history of the Lancaster witches. This is free to get into if you do visit here, but that tour was £8.50, wasn't it? £8 that tour, Shui?
Yeah, £8, per adult.
£8 per adult. Tried here in 1612, accused by a 9-year-old. Oh dear, look at this. So these people were hanged on the say-so of a 9-year-old girl who accused her family of being witches. Grandmother, mother. So in that, she lost all her family, that girl. Weird, aren't we, human beings? Such a macabre history. Nothing nice to say about the history, is there? It's all wars, it's all depression, it's all killings and hangings. Have we ever been any good as human beings? Judicially, Lancaster formed part of the Northern Circuit. Judges visited twice a year to hold the assizes on the 18th of August 1612. The trials began with Sir Edward Bromley presiding. Thomas Potts served as a clerk of the court. It is from his writings that we have any record of these trials. And if you want to pause that and read it, you're more than welcome, rippers. It's a fascinating trip. Nine of the Pendle witches were sentenced to hang, along with Isabel Roby, an inhabitant of Windle near St Helens, also accused of witchcraft. The evidence against her was sparse, but she was still condemned. Those on whom sentence had been passed were conveyed to the moors above the town. On the way, they were allegedly permitted to stop at the Golden Lion for one last drink. How lovely. Gallows were erected on the hill at the top of the road, allowing room for the crowd to witness the humiliating public deaths. The trials had been notorious, and the spectators must have been filled with excitement and trepidation. The witches were to be hanged using a short drop method, ensuring a drawn-out death by strangulation. And these deaths would take about 10 to 20 minutes. for them to die. It wasn't quick, and then they'd leave them to hang for an hour to make sure. Imagine that, hanging for 10 to 20 minutes before you died. Now this is it's a prison. This is the prison museum.
No, it's not prison, it's a police museum.
It's a police museum for the prisoners. Access in case of emergency. Oh.
Welcome to our police museum.
Hello there, you alright?
Is this your first time here?
Yes.
They had to get on because there was locked up for hours and hours on end.
Yeah.
So yeah, they had to get on. Downstairs explains a little bit of history, what life was like, what they used to eat, what they used to get up to, what medical issues they had and what have you. But the best bit, which we're really proud of, is upstairs. So be careful on the stairs for us, because they didn't have lifts in 1800s. So
This was still going till the 1960s, wasn't it?
31st of March 2011 is when
Wow,
it closed.
2011.
So it's only 13 years ago that it closed as a fully functional working prison.
Wow.
I did hear that tour guy say 2011
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Still going till
This
then.
was the picture of all the staff that was here when it closed.
Oh, it's the last.
But as I say, there's 3 prisons here in Lancaster Castle grounds. There's the A wing, C wing across the courtyard is for female prisoners only. They're never too mixed for obvious reasons.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you've got B wing, which is the debtors prison.
Yes.
So you worked, paid, fine, worked, paid off some of your fine. You were never allowed out the castle until you paid the whole fine.
Some used to go there, didn't they, to get rid of their debt, to hide their debt.
That's right.
Yeah.
Go there and stay there like a hotel.
It looks like there's a lot of staff there, but when you break it up, when you've got days, nights, and you've got 3 prisons here, there's not a lot there.
Not a lot.
Really. Because
Not a lot of
a lot of those will be admin staff.
Yeah. Wow.
It's only in 1989 that they actually introduced proper working flushing toilets in every cell.
Really?
Before 1989, slot buckets.
Oh, dear.
Oh,
You
smelly.
can imagine the noise, the smell, and everything. It would have been terrible.
Your cellmate, if you had curry, you'd be,
Yeah.
you'd be in for it, wouldn't you?
But fortunately, the way they had it designed, each floor had a room set aside, one of these rooms, what was called the wet room.
Yeah.
So each level had one. So all the prisoners, to empty their buckets, they go to the wet room, get rid of the contents, wash it, swill it, take a mop and bucket and go and mop out their cell and tidy it up and then carry on.
Oh, very interesting.
So once you're finished upstairs having a look, because each cell has got a theme to it. So as you go around, you'll see items in the cells that you may recognise or you've seen before. But a lot of the stuff that's upstairs is what's been donated to us from past and present prison and police officers. So you'll find it absolutely fascinating.
Wow, it's brilliant.
We used to have a small museum of a similar ilk in Lancaster City Centre, and we wanted to expand. So when when Lancaster Constabulary approached the Duchy, our late Queen, God bless her, they said, well, what are you going to do with it? Well, it stood empty, nobody's using it anymore. It has been used for some film locations and documentaries and what have you. So they said, yeah, okay, you can use it, but you've got to have 2 things you've got to do before you open it up to the general public. One, get rid of the horrible, nasty-looking suicide netting between the 2 floors, and you can see the hooks where it was.
Yeah, it's common, that, wasn't it?
Yeah. So there's a picture on the wall there of the suicide netting.
So you couldn't jump off, kill yourself.
Yeah, or throw somebody over.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we had to do is to make sure we take all the locks of every cell door so nobody could be accidentally locked in.
All right.
Which has happened in other police
my
museums
God.
down the country.
Really?
You'll see. So feel free to have a wander. Any
Okay.
questions? My colleague's upstairs, I'm downstairs.
Thank you very
and you
much.
can take as many pictures as you wish.
Thank you very much.
The last
Appreciate
thing-
that.
The last thing I can offer for you, if you wish, I can ask you to go behind bars. I can take a picture of you behind bars.
Come on, Sui. Let's go and do that.
As a nice.
Let me out, please.
Is that another view?
Just a little, so you can look out.
Yeah.
sausage. Good for filming. So the police were doing judo and all sorts. Got a police constable guide.
Yeah.
8th edition. It's interesting. Each cell's got its own theme.
So this was training thing.
Training theme. The ladies, look, doing their business. See, in those days, look, police had to be fit and strong and tall. Now they're just whatever. Isn't it?
You have to be physical.
Got the mounted police.
Mounted.
Mounted. Wow. Mounted police. Oh, look at all the criminals there, look. No, the criminals there.
Yeah.
These are innocents. That's your early forensics. Sherlock Homo. Somebody's got some strong perfume, haven't they?
Yeah. Oh, on this.
Well, this is the underwater. Frogmen,
Underwater
the
search.
police,
Oh, it's not-
helicopters,
And
a dog,
they support unit. Police dog.
police dogs. All the rioters, look, they've got to protect themselves from the rioters, people that,
Yeah, just in case they throw you some firebomb or something.
the people that are protesting, you mean?
Yeah.
God, it's like George Orwell, doesn't it?
Yeah.
George Orwell. Anti-terrorist. Might be a copyright infringement. Look at that policeman there, look. Doing that all day long.
Traffic cop,
Wow.
traffic warden.
In those days, police looked like the criminals and the criminals looked like the police. Criminals look like police.
This one looks more proper. This one really like a hard man.
Proper hard money, isn't it? That's copper. No. Proper policing that was in them days. Look at the slums. Look at the slums that they lived in. The early speeding cameras.
Oh, really?
Oh, these things.
Got so many radar.
Zephyrs lot. Wallowy things they were.
Yeah.
Mark 1 escorts. Tillmans or some whatever they are.
That's funny shit.
Slow as anything.
Really?
I got the kids training lot for their school and everything. Kids loving it lot.
Oh, alright. So it's a school thing.
Really part of this. It was a part of the community, weren't they?
Yeah, road safety.
Very, very good. Lady police. So each cell's got a lovely little theme to it. Oh, I lost a mum lot, she has. She lost a mum. Where's my mum? Very interesting place.
Child. It's a lost child.
Yeah. He was arrested for playing football on the highway. What a criminal. In 1837, William and 3 friends were put on trial, one accused of stealing 2 ducks, one of assisting of plucking them, and 2 for assisting in eating them. Criminals. In 1812, Abraham, officially listed as 16, but who may have been young as 13 years old, was found guilty of being involved in burning down a cotton weaving mill. Now that is serious.
That's naughty.
January 1837, a 15-year-old John was convicted of stealing 6 pairs of braces at Preston Quarter Sessions. Hope his teeth are good from braces, yeah. In April 1831, 9-year-old Mary from Haslingden was on trial for stealing cotton dress. Oh, she wanted to do better, didn't she? She wanted something better. That pretty cotton dress she wanted.
Yeah.
What you been arrested for, Sue, in your life, eh? Criminal.
Doing something here, I'll take a photo.
See how tall you are, Suey? Go on.
Stand there, how tall you are.
Stand there.
No, don't stand there.
Because you're up to here.
No, No, of course I'm here.
You're 5 foot. You're 5 foot taller.
I should do a stretching.
How tall am I?
Yeah,
just
it's
under
stand
6
there.
foot.
It's stand there. I'll take. Oh, wow. Oh,
6 foot.
I think it's more than 6 foot.
No.
Yeah, it's more than 6 foot.
Am I?
Yes, go against the wheel, the wall, and you know. You see, slightly over 6 foot.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Now I'm 6'5" with my hat on.
yeah.
Terrible filming.
So like Shui.
This is Doctor. Another good looking bloke.
Yeah, what happened then? Mary Jane Rogerson.
This is your wet room, your bathing room. It's alright, you get a nice bath.
He's also very jealous husband. Oh,
It's common.
why was it? It's terrible.
So this chap here was a doctor, very jealous man. His wife, who was outgoing and liked to dance all night, he murdered her.
And then the maid saw him doing that. So
His friend saw him doing it.
And then so he killed her as well.
He killed his friend as well.
No, he killed the maid, the housemaid.
Unfortunately for him, he was seen by the housemaid, Mary Jane Rogerson, and so he murdered her too. To dispose of the bodies, Ruxton first dismembered them in both. He wrapped the body parts in bedding, clothes and sheets of an edition of the Sunday Graphic newspaper. He later drove to Scotland and threw the body parts into a ravine near the town of Moffat in Dumfriesshire. 29th of September 1935, a woman crossing a bridge near the Moffat saw what she thought was a human arm in the ravine below. She told her brother, who returned and discovered parts of 2 decomposed, dismembered bodies mutilated beyond any recognition. Wow. Oh dear. No.
So the house now.
Bath could do a nice clean. These are nice clean, doesn't it?
So that.
What an absolutely beautiful evening. But the person in this house here doesn't like boats moored opposite his house. Even though he lives on the canal. Some people are just weird, love. But what cheers me up about that is Shui's cooking, homemade sausages from Taiwan, which are absolutely gorgeous, aren't they, Shui?
Yeah.
Filthy thumbs up from me, love.